All righty. Well, welcome everyone to our March 7th Village Council meeting. The meeting has already been called to order. We started with an executive session at 6 p.m. And that was for the purpose of investigating complaints of a public official and to discuss the hiring of a public employee. Regarding the investigation of complaints, we have not made a firm decision as of yet, but we will in due time consider amending our current rules for council engagement, and those rule changes that we anticipate considering will focus primarily on the behavior of council persons in the social media sphere and the degree to which that behavior is a reflection of the council position. So again, we ask for your patience as we go through these steps, and we anticipate at the next meeting having an ordinance in place to modify our existing rules, and again, to highlight issues dealing with social media. Josue, do you want to begin our announcements? Please, if you're able. While we're waiting for Josue to come back, are there any other announcements?
I know that we're waiting, Kevin, for Alex Scott to give us an announcement, and I thought that I saw her on. She's got
I'm back if you.
So Alex, give us just a minute. Alex, Josue, you want to go ahead and give your announcement, please?
Yes, thank you, Kevin. I have a few announcements, and the most important one is tonight. That is as it is customary for Brian and I to have a planning session before every council meeting. At the conclusion of our planning for tonight's meeting, we took a coffee break, and we both parted ways to do what we do to get ready for the meeting, get our coffee and get snacks. Brian took the stairs and tripped the stairs and has suffered a head injury, which is contributed to his absence. He's unable to be here, so he's been rushed to the hospital, to the trauma center for a trauma injury. So he's not able to join us tonight. So I ask that keep Brian in your thoughts due to this injury.
Thank you, Josue. While you have the floor, Josue, do you want to go ahead and give us an update on the chief of police hiring process?
Yes. Thank you all for those that have attended the public forum, have provided feedback on the candidates that have been presented to the public. We've had several business owners send in their emails and have reached out to me about their encounter with the candidates. So I appreciate all the feedback. The process, I'll give you an update in terms of process, as we're not ready to make an announcement tonight. The process, we would take the next couple weeks to finalize our collection of information. So if you are planning to submit a survey, we ask that you do so by 5 p.m. on Wednesday. I've had my first part of the meeting with council tonight, and I will have a meeting with the citizens panel, citizens that were part of the police search committee. So I will have that meeting tomorrow, and we will review our notes and follow our process. And based on council's input, their input, and your input via the surveys, we will finalize our decision. And move towards securing our next chief of police. And we would take the next 2 weeks to do final due diligence and negotiations with the candidate. We hope that if all goes well and we're able to meet all of our requirements within the next 2 weeks, we the earliest we will be making a decision or an announcement would be at the next council meeting, which is March 21st. So that's the update on the process. I have one more update, Kevin, if I may.
Sure.
The other update is you've seen that we had another major weather event. So a lot of rain again last night and into today, and so we're processing a lot of stormwater. I'm proud of where we are now. You know, with the major work that we've done to improve our sanitary flows, we've kept out a lot of stormwater from our system, and that helps us deal with this sudden big weather events. If this would have happened in 2019 or prior, we would have had major overflow problems. And I'm just grateful of all the work that we've been able to do to be able to sustain such large weather events. But you know, this is not the solution to all of it. We still have a lot of work to do. And one of the things we got before council tonight is the second reading of establishing a stormwater capital fund, so we continue to make improvements in stormwater systems. But I ask that our residents can also help contribute. If you have a storm basin, a storm drain near and around your property, we can't always get to it expeditiously. So we ask that give us a hand if you see it covered, and help us keep those storm drains clear so that the stormwater can drain faster from the village.
Thank you, Josue. Appreciate that. All right, Alex, you're up. Alex.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for taking the time to have us here today. My name's Alexandra Scott. I'm the Outreach and Fundraising Manager at Yellow Springs Home Inc. My name's Alexandra Scott. So basically, after the source of income legislation...
Alex, can you hold just a second, please? I'm not sure where the feedback is coming from. But we are asking for everyone else, if you're not muted, to do so. Thank you. Go ahead, Alex. Sorry about that. Alex might need help getting unmuted again. That's why.
Thank you.
Unmuted again. That's why.
Thank you. Okay, I'm back. So after the source of income discrimination legislation was passed last year, at least sometime in January, and perhaps still Angie will be able to speak to that.
Alex, the echo is coming from your sound. You have your YouTube or something playing in the background? Okay. All right, we'll give it one more try. Go ahead, Alex.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Awesome.
Yeah, Alex, please forgive me once again. Josue, someone is waiting to come in the room that's not identified. I know we had the issue earlier, and given the events that are happening in the world, we want to be careful with whom we let into the room. So everyone that's interested in coming into this Zoom session, we're asking that you rename yourself so that we know who you are, please. Thank you. Go ahead, Alex.
Okay, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. So I'm just here with Angela Shockley from Greene Metropolitan Housing Authority. We just wanted a few minutes to provide some information about the Section 8 and housing voucher programs. Hopefully this will be useful to the community. So I'll let Angie take it away if that's all right.
Alex, is Angie, I'm sorry, Josue, is Angie able
yes,
to?
Angie, you should be able to.
Hi.
There you go.
Can you hear me? Okay. Just want to make sure you could hear me. I'm Angie Shockley. I'm a Section 8 supervisor with Greene Metropolitan Housing Authority. I'd like to thank you for allowing us to speak today to tell you a little bit about our program. Section 8 participants that receive a voucher can take their voucher and house anywhere in Greene County with it, with a landlord that is willing to accept a Section 8 voucher. We give them a payment standard based on their unit size. So a 1-bedroom payment standard is $748, a 2-bedroom $959, a 3-bedroom $1280, and a 4-bedroom $1373. And that's for rent and utilities combined. The tenant's always going to be responsible for paying 30 to 40% of their income out in rent utilities, and we pick up the difference between that amount and the amount of the payment standard. Sometimes tenants can go, if they have income, they can pay over the payment standard, but they can't pay out more than 40% of their income total in rent and utilities. So if a landlord is interested in renting to a Section 8 client, they will bring up some paperwork to you out of their what we call their red folder. It's a red folder we give them with all the paperwork they need to fill out and the paperwork that the landlord needs to fill out. The landlord would fill that out and their portion out, and they can either return it to us themselves or they can send it with the client. Once we have both the client and landlord's portion of the paperwork, we'll review it, make sure that the client income qualifies for the unit. Once we determine income eligibility, then we will set up an inspection with the landlord. It will come out and make sure it meets what we call HQS, which is housing quality standards. We'll also determine that the unit is rent reasonable. Now, we do have higher payment standards in Beaver Creek and Yellow Springs versus the rest of Greene County because of the higher rents in those two areas. The client will then, if it passes inspection, from the day that passes inspection, if they're new to our program, they can move in that day. If it's a unit transfer, if we're currently assisting them with the rent in the current month, then we'd be able to start it on the first of the following month. Our clients do receive annual inspections from us once a year. And at that time, we're looking to make sure that the client is also keeping up on the property. We will fill items on the clients if they're not. If they don't make resolution with those items in 30 days, they get terminated from the program. Our payment to the landlord is always guaranteed as long as housing quality standards are kept and the tenant is still living in the unit. We send our portion out via direct deposit the first working day of every month. I know that recently you passed some regulations, and we did get some calls, and we have spoke to landlords in depth about that. And I know sometimes inspections are a concern with new landlords. If you are a new landlord on the program and you're concerned if the unit would pass before you fill out paperwork for a client, you're welcome to give me a call, and I'll do send our inspectors out to do a one-time courtesy inspection, just to kind of walk through the property and show you what we're looking for. But I'm open to any questions anybody might have. We also have, and I will tell you, we do have prospective landlord packets on our website, and that's gmha.net. And I can email those out or mail them out if somebody needs one of those. You can always give me a call. My number is 937-352-0256. But I'm open to any questions anybody might have.
Well, Angela, I don't see any hands yet, but I will certainly want to thank you for simplifying very succinctly what some folks probably feel is a very complicated process. I don't own the properties, but family members own the properties that I've helped get the housing quality standards up to in Montgomery County for a few places that are on Section 8. So I'm a fan of Section 8, and we appreciate the fact that you are fielding questions from our local landlords that are calling, asking about how our new ordinances might impact them. And that courtesy inspection that should be a game changer. I think that's, that's sort of the mystery I think that people have. It's like, what's it going to take? What do I have to do to keep this place up? And I think that courtesy inspection is a real plus. And I hope, wish you all much success in your endeavors.
We appreciate that. And we're happy to work with anybody. If any questions, please feel free to call me.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
And Kevin, if I may, Angie, thank you so much for your work with us, because as you know, we are now
Yes, you're our
landlord.
Section 8 landlords. We appreciate
Yes.
that.
So it's been a very pleasant experience, and I look to a long-term relationship with you and your team. And
We look forward to
our
it.
tenants.
Yes, yes.
Excellent. Good news all around. Well, thanks once again for your time. We appreciate you. Thank you much, Angie and Alex. Thank you much.
Thank you.
Josue, appreciate your updating us and reminding us about that. All right, next on the agenda is our consent agenda, which includes the minutes of the February 22nd regular session of council. Can I get a motion?
I move.
Second.
All right, thank you very much. Judy, you want to call the roll?
Yes, Brown,
Yes.
McQueen,
Yes.
Stokes.
Yes.
Thank you.
And in the way of announcement, Josue did advise that Brian is out this evening. And if you hadn't noticed, Lisa Krieger is also out due to work obligations. So when you hear the roll call, it's going a little quicker than it normally does. But there's just the three of us, and 3 is quorum. So this is, for the record, an official council meeting. All righty. Now, a review of the agenda. Are there any items that need to be added or removed from the current agenda? All righty. Hearing none, we're going to move on. I'll go ahead and do petitions and communications. So the council clerk has received, in the way of petitions and communications, a letter from Patrick Lake regarding a complaint against Brian Housh, Esua Mazur with the general diatribe, Judith Hempfling regarding zoning code comments, Laura Curliss, a request to end COVID restrictions, Cynthia MacDonald with questions regarding masking. We've got the information from the Greene County Public Health Department discussing the COVID monitoring framework, which I think we'll talk about again later. Sue Parker, thoughts on civility. Dino Pallotta, complaint against Brian Housh. The mayor's clerk issued the mayor's court reports, and we have 2 of those. Brian Housh issued a letter with a public apology for behavior that has caused some folks some concerns. And Dorothee Bouquet with a proposal for wastewater sampling. Judy, was there anything else that came in via email that didn't make it to the agenda?
Yes, Kevin, I mistitled Laura Curliss's submission, and it should have read, and I know you folks did read it, a request to rescind resolution 2021-49. And I don't know whether you folks wanted to determine whether you want a resolution brought to the next meeting, whether you want to just vote it up or down, or how you wanted to handle that, but she did make that request.
With regard to legislation, as Laura is requesting, would it be appropriate for us to decide now, or should we maybe wait till next meeting when it could be presented in some sort of draft form? What's most appropriate?
Oh, no, I'm not saying that the resolution would be determined, only the decision to bring, whether or not to bring a resolution to the next meeting.
Okay, gotcha. Well, council, are you in a position now to make a decision on that issue, or do you want to table it till later? Okay, I'm seeing a no.
I think that next meeting, we could address it next meeting if. So I move that we address it next meeting.
Absolutely appropriate. All right, so thank you. Just please make note of that, Judy. All right. Yeah.
Kevin?
Yes, Marianne.
I'd like it if Josue during the manager's report could address the issue that Judith and Dorothee brought up, to whether that's a possibility for us to test for COVID in the waste stream. But thanks.
All right, Josue has acknowledged that. All righty, so nothing else on any amendments to the agenda. So we're moving on with legislation. Our first piece of legislation is the second reading and public hearing notice of ordinance 2022-05. Judy, you can go ahead and read that by title only, please.
All right, this ordinance is establishing a street capital improvement fund.
Can I get a motion?
I move.
Second.
All righty. Josue, I think this is yours.
Yes, Kevin, and I'll make remarks related to both pieces of legislation.
Okay.
This is primarily a housekeeping item. As you know, we're routinely making improvements on our infrastructure, making capital improvement via the mini capital improvement projects. But we lack the accounting, the accounting accounts to be able to properly allocate that expense to. So this issue came up most recently as we were looking to book the expenses for the Dayton Storm reroute project. As you know, we received over $400,000 in state funds to make improvements to our stormwater system. Well, as we were looking to book the expense, we do not have a stormwater capital fund, so it made it challenging for accounting purposes. So we're looking to establish these two funds. They are capital improvement funds, one for street and one for stormwater. This would allow us to keep track of capital improvements or capital expenses towards those particular items.
Okay, thank you very much. So I'm going to open the floor, with this being the second reading, I'm going to open the floor, open the meeting for public comments, both by council and for the public. Council, do you have any comments?
No.
Marianne, you're muted.
I think it makes sense to have these funds set aside. Yeah.
Excellent, thank you. Carmen, anything on this one?
No, it makes perfect sense to have this be something that we address.
All right, appreciate that, thank you. I'm looking around for any hands or hand waving by anyone in the public. Not seeing any, so I'm going to close the public comments. And Judy, if you want to call the roll.
Yes, Stokes,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
McQueen.
Yes.
All right, the ordinance has passed. Next ordinance, this is the second reading of ordinance 2022-06. And Judy, if you could read that by title only.
All right, this is an ordinance establishing a stormwater capital improvement fund.
Can I get a motion?
I move.
Second.
Great, thank you much. Josue, thank you for the comments you made earlier. Is there anyone else that wants to add from the staff side on the second ordinance?
It's just me tonight, Kevin. Johnny's not able to join us tonight.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you for that update. All right. We're going to open up this part of the meeting for public comments on this ordinance. And is there any comments from anyone in the public as well as council? Okay. Seeing no activity, we're going to close public comments. And Judy, if you could call the roll.
Yes, Brown,
Yes.
McQueen,
Yes.
Stokes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Alrighty. So I'm chuckled because I saw the title of the next ordinance.
Yeah. Well, the ordinance itself is actually longer, so
Okay.
I'm jealous. I'm wondering if I should title my resolutions and ordinance that way.
Yeah, because you know, there's nothing left to say after you read the title. All right. So this will be the first reading of ordinance 2022-07. Judy, please read this by title only, please.
all righty, here we go. Approving and granting consent to the Director of the Ohio Department of Transportation Authority to apply, maintain, and repair standard longitudinal pavement markings and erect regulatory and warning signs on state highways inside village corporate limits, and giving consent of the village for the Ohio Department of Transportation to remove snow and ice and use snow and ice control material on state highways inside the village corporate limits, and giving consent of the village for the Ohio Department of Transportation to perform maintenance and or repair on state highways inside the village corporation.
All right, can I get a motion?
I move.
Second.
All righty.
This is a housekeeping item, Kevin, that we have a state highway that runs through 68, and we need an ordinance to authorize ODOT to maintain that road. Or state highway. Brianne, is there anything else?
Do we do this every year?
Every time ODOT wants it, they update on a biennial basis with the state budget. So we can never really predict when we're going to get it. So
But
sometimes it's every other year.
I strongly encourage council to support this.
This is not the one that where we haven't made changes to it for like 10 years or so. There's some, I don't know if it's this one or another one I'm thinking about. And if so, don't worry about it. We're good. All right. Well, this is the first reading. And it's not by emergency. So any other commentary from anyone? Already? So we're going to move on then to the reading of Resolution 2022-15. And Judy, if you could read that. Let's start by title only.
All right, this is strongly opposing House Bill 563.
Can I get a motion?
I move.
Second.
Thank you. Brianne, do you want to take this one?
I can. So House Bill 250 or 563 would actually regulate the ability of municipalities to prohibit or provide certain restrictions on Airbnb operations. Well, we have them regulated as transient guest lodgings. I guess, if you will, loophole in the proposed law would be that we could regulate them the way we would any other rental operation. So there is a lot of opposition to this, of course, from the Ohio Municipal League, as well as other communities that have tried to look at what Airbnb establishments are doing in certain residential areas in terms of driving out affordable housing when these properties are converted from traditional rentals or owner occupied to full-blown Airbnbs that are basically income producing operations. Now, we have had discussion about what are we going to do in terms of a village as far as providing testimony in opposition to this bill. The Ohio Municipal League actually sent out the advisory today because the testimony schedule has been released. So we could look at what is the actual impact to us if this bill passes. Again, we can regulate TGLs the same way we would any other rental, but at this point, it would be something that would be infringing on our home rule powers, which would be why we would oppose it.
Okay. Brianne, I have a question. So yes, I saw the Ohio Municipal League announcement that I guess testimony would be heard on Wednesday afternoon.
That's correct.
And so any written testimony that's expected to be read, presumably, needs to be submitted by tomorrow afternoon at 3. Do you feel, I mean, we do have the resolution that will be sent. Do you feel it's appropriate, or you think it's timely or maybe necessary for us to prepare something in the way of testimony? And can that be just read, or would someone have to show up in person?
Someone would have to show up in person to read the testimony, but we can send the resolution saying this is the position of the village council.
Well, I guess I should ask, is there anyone willing to go to Columbus Wednesday afternoon?
I would go, but we have a meeting here at 6, and I don't know whether you can just go in and get out of there.
Usually it has to be scheduled.
So so the scheduling of it, I mean, the session begins at 3. So I would imagine, there might be several folks testifying. So, everybody would sort of have a time slot. Is that the way it would work, Brianne?
That's usually how it works. Now, again, the Ohio Municipal League being essentially the lobbying group for municipalities, including the village, they take care of handling a lot of the scheduling for us because they don't like to have duplicative testimony. They want everyone to identify concerns and basically present them as a compilation under the executive director if the concerns are typical to all municipalities. But for unique concerns, and we've had a unique situation here in the village being a tourist destination, we can basically send that to the municipal league as far as the standard concerns and expect them to present it. But if we've got something unique, we would definitely want to give testimony.
I'm willing to talk with Josue and Brianne about how to move this forward and whether it makes sense for me to go or anyone to go. So.
Okay. All right.
We can send the resolution to the OML and they will include that if we don't have anyone who's able to testify.
Okay.
All right. So we can leave that then. Josue, are you comfortable with you, Brianne, and Marianne working out a strategy regarding our communications with OML and with the state? Oh.
Absolutely. I've been tracking this issue, and there'll be a hearing in the next couple of days that we have what we need to submit a resolution and testimony. And I'm glad that we have statewide support on preserving the autonomy and home rule authority of every community in the state. Indeed.
All right. Well, thank you, team, for being willing to go, especially Marianne, to go the extra miles, as it were, if necessary. But we definitely appreciate your support. And so we trust that you guys will move that forward. We have the resolution, and Judy, just make sure that all of our I's are dotted, T's crosses, any signatures required.
You might want to pass this sucker first, but yes, I will need to get your signature, Kevin, and I'll track you down tomorrow. I'll find you.
Excellent. Not a problem. On that note, Judy, would you like to call the roll?
Yes, Brown.
Yes.
McQueen.
Yes.
Stokes.
Yes.
Thank you.
All righty. I will avail myself of you tomorrow for signature.
I will find you.
Indeed, you will. All righty. Resolution number 22-16. Judy, if you don't mind reading that in its entirety, I appreciate it.
Sure. Whereas Council for the Village of Yellow Springs, on behalf of the entire community, wishes to condemn the Russian military invasion of Ukraine and its continued brutal assault on the Ukrainian people and land. And whereas the Ukraine is a democratic nation that deserves its independence and autonomy to be respected by the rest of the world. And whereas Russia has infringed on the rights and well-being of Ukrainians by starting an unjust war that should be vehemently opposed by all countries and communities. And whereas the Village of Yellow Springs values and actively advocates for democracy, freedom, equity, diversity, and peace for all people, and strongly supports Ukrainians and the integrity of their culture. And whereas we wish those affected by this war to know that the world, even those in a small town in Ohio, are watching and are deeply impressed at the resolve, bravery, and resistance of a people under siege, and are deeply grieved by this unwarranted and merciless invasion. And whereas we condemn in the strongest terms this action, now therefore be it resolved that 1, the Village Council hereby condemns Russian military and governmental assault on the sovereign nation of Ukraine. 2, Council for the Village of Yellow Springs urges all who wish to take action to contribute to a credentialed organization able to provide immediate assistance to refugees and Ukrainians unable or unwilling to flee. Doctors Without Borders, Voices of Children, Sunflower of Peace, etc. All are available through a link that's attached. You can just click on the online resolution.
All right. Thank you, Judy. Can I get a motion?
I move.
Second.
Thank you. So just for those that have expressed concern regarding council's involvement with the Ukrainian issue, we've got some questions about, our social media presence on this issue. And I would just say, and I think Judy has spoken to most of the folks who had questions, that we are a representative and a legislative body, and what we do to make statements typically is in the form of either ordinance or resolution. So given our schedule of meetings, it might appear that we're late to the party, as it were, but what we do to make statements of support of causes like this is typically in the form of a resolution. I do think, Judy, if you can share where else we've maybe put some messaging up, I think on the village website, and to the degree that Facebook is helpful in this regard, perhaps there as well. But Judy, can you just share light on where else we've shared our position on this issue?
Well, prior to legislative action being taken, there is nothing on the official village government site. The village Facebook site has expressed, standing with Ukraine, which is, we have much more latitude to be able to do that kind of thing on the village Facebook site. And I'm not aware of where else that's gone, but those are really the two sort of, one official village site and the other, the Facebook village site.
Okay, so I think now that we've done this, we, for the most part, have covered all of our bases. And I'm sure we echo the sentiments of all or most of the village residents in expressing our support for the people of Ukraine. All righty. Thank you very much. Is there anything else we need to do with this one?
Roll call?
Roll call, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for being so gracious.
I thought you were winding over to that.
Yep.
Yes.
McQueen.
Yes.
Stokes.
Oh, yes.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. All right, our last bit of legislation is Resolution 2022-17. Judy, if you could read that by title only.
Sure. This is authorizing the village manager to execute a grant award for $100,000 to execute an award for in the amount of $100,000 from Greene County Board of Commissioners on behalf of Antioch College.
Kevin, I've got a point of order on this one. Since Antioch is your employer, it would probably be appropriate for you to recuse. However, that does not present a problem from a voting perspective because we've got Section 26 resolutions. The resolutions may be enacted by a majority vote on a formal motion of the members of council present. So short of kicking it to the next meeting, we can act on this tonight with 2 of 3. And you would just say when it comes around that you abstain.
Great, thank you. I appreciate you being my guardrails, Greene. Thank you. Josue,
Yes.
you got the floor.
Thank you. Thank you, Kevin. All right. So as you guys know, I try my best to secure any and all resources that I can for our community. I am not embarrassed to go ask people for money. And when I see a funding opportunity, I knock on the doors and, I ask for money for things that improve our community. And this is one of them. We had a very narrow window to submit the Antioch Union building as a site for the demolition projects or demolition funding that's available from the state and money that's funneled to the county. So each county gets $500,000 for demolition projects. I saw the opportunity to secure much needed funding for Antioch College to demolish a building that's condemned. This is a hot project. It's something that needs to be demolished, and there's just no fixing it. And I'm sure there'll be citizens that'll come up with ideas of how to fix this one. Trust me, this one is covered in mold. This one cannot be fixed. So it needs to be demolished. And Antioch has commitment. They're committed from a leadership perspective, financial perspective, to resolve the challenges with the site. And we've been successful in securing a $100,000 grant for Antioch College to address this long overdue problem on its campus. So what you're approving tonight is for authorization for me to proceed with this grant, secure the grant agreement and authorize the grant award for Antioch College.
All right. Thank you. Is there any other discussion? All right. Thank you much, everyone. Judy, if you can call the roll.
McQueen,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Stokes.
I abstain.
Thank you.
All right. We have come.
You know what?
I'm sorry,
Hold up, backing up. We need to back all the way up because we don't have a motion to approve. Could I get a motion to approve?
I move to approve resolution 2022-17.
Second.
Thank you. And sorry about that. I missed it for a second there. McQueen,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Stokes.
I abstain.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
Well, thank you for being my other guardrail. Okay, and keeping me on the straight and narrow. And thanks to everyone for being so gracious, by the way. All right, we've come to the part of the meeting where we'll open the floor for citizen concerns. That will be to bring to our attention any items that are not currently on the agenda. And the floor is open, and we are looking for a virtual hand raised or wild waving once your camera is on. All righty, I see Catherine Price has raised her hand. So is she able to?
Yes,
Yes, I'm unmuted now.
We can hear you, Catherine.
I would just like to comment on the formal resolution that you passed. And at first I was one of the people that thought I didn't understand why we would have to have a formal one and we couldn't just hang banners. I really appreciate that you passed it. And I understand now.
And this is in reference to the Ukraine-Russian conflict, the invasion of Ukraine.
Yes, to stand with Ukraine and to denounce Putin's invasion. And I feel like since it has weight, I was thinking through this, that the next step, other countries have cut their business ties to Putin. Anything that increases the economy or helps the economy there. And I was just thinking that if we were to cut business ties with anything related to Putin, one business here that operates here is the Ober company, whose owner has indirectly aided Putin's efforts by having donated to the fund of our ex-president who publicly supports Putin. So I was hoping that we could figure out the right avenue in which to show our sincere resolution having weight that we intend it to have. I really don't know how to go about that, but it could be just something during this time while things are being sorted out, that there could be limitations on Ober's company's presence here. And I'm really serious about asking this, because if people don't make absolute sacrifices, and you know, it's got to hold weight when we say something like that. And it is true, I admit I'm prejudiced against that business, but I also believe that it's pretty direct line of funding and support coming from that company. And I also admit that it's difficult to follow the money trails of anything that we purchase, you know, because it comes from so many different places in the world to create something that we might buy or use. But in this case, it just feels really direct, and it feels like if we don't make some limitation, that this will be an insincere attempt in just words. And
And that is 3 minutes.
I'm so serious. Thank you. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Kevin, for your comments. Is there anyone else wanting to weigh in on citizens' concerns? Again, I'm looking for Zoom hands or real hands.
I've got no jazz hands for you, Kevin, and no hands up in the chat.
Gotcha. All righty. So we're going to close citizens' concerns, and we're moving on with special reports. Not sure that we're anticipating any special reports. Do we have any that I'm not aware of?
Nope.
Okay. Excellent. All right. Old business. We have the Active Transportation Enhancement Committee with a formal proposal from Mary Ann McQueen. Mary Ann, you have the floor.
Thank you. Yes. So this is, I think, maybe the third time this has been coming to council. The idea is to formalize a group of people that are involved in active transportation. And that would be people that bike, people that walk, and people that are advocates for differently abled people using our sidewalks and our streets. So at the last meeting, Brianne suggested wording. I chose word that Brianne suggested, active transportation advisory group, that could be a group. Now, who it's advising, that this is an issue. Is it coming to Planning Commission? Is it advising the village manager? Is it advising our village staff in general? That's a question. But Josue and I did talk today about the various things that such a group can do. And basically, I see it as giving broader expertise and time and energy to our staff. In other words, a group that can vet things that have already been in the planning, that can do research, that can reach out into the community and do programs around active transportation. And it can be, if it's true that it doesn't have to be publicly noticed, then different people involved in the group could work on a particular project, and it wouldn't necessarily have to be the full group coming together all the time. So I'd like to open it up to council and staff for any comments, especially who would this be advising? Is it Planning Commission? Is it Josue? Is it Johnny? Is it what? Council?
Josue, you want to step in, please?
Oh, sure. I'll add my 2 cents to it. And there's been an effort to organize this active transportation committee long before I took the job. And that's what led to the active transportation plan, which my administration, we embraced it, and we knocked on every funding door that we could on this, and we were able to get $1.8 million of funding to execute some of the initiatives that are in active transportation plan. So I see the need for a committee on 2 things. For grant applications, it looks good for us to have a committee that has citizen input, that we are running programs and initiatives through, so that when we are soliciting funds, we tell the grantor that we've had community input, citizen feedback on this, and that there's an overwhelming amount of support for the projects that we're bringing to the grantors. So it helped us on that front. For the project that we are looking at now, that we are currently conducting right-of-way acquisition and engineering for, that's the $1.8 million active transportation plan. It'll be helpful for us to have a group of citizens that are part of the work that we're doing, that we can showcase the engineering, and they'll provide their input, and we'll inform the grantor we've had citizen feedback on this project. So we would like to have access to a group like that for the work that we do, that would enable our work. I give you other examples of where citizen collaboration has been fruitful. I've been working with Gary Serensky and Mark Heiss, and Mark Heiss is on tonight, and Mark and Gary and Chris Bonjourner fixed the bike station here at the train station. They had the resources, they had the expertise, and they knew exactly what supplies to get, and we said, hey, let's get it done. Let's just, you have our permission, let's get this fixed, and they did so in an expeditious manner. We're working on bicycle parking racks. As you know, for last year we partnered with the Greene County Youth Welding Program, and they designed these butterfly parking structures for us. We're working with Gary, Mark, and his team to make the 2.0 version of that, and we're taking their feedback on how to improve the design. We've sent that off to the Greene County Youth Welding Program, and hope that they can adapt it. So we've got some examples where it worked well. I was sharing with Mary Ann, how do we make this next iteration work? There's a benefit of being under the manager's advisory model, which falls under my purview, and so there aren't all those public notice requirements and whatnot. But where do we see it fitting for the rest of the bodies? Does council want to see it as a subcommittee and it's advising council, or as a subcommittee of planning commission? There are other needs in other bodies, and we want to make sure that we are having the dialogue as we make a decision, so we find the best place for it, and in a way that it's enabling. It enables all of our work, and it doesn't take up a lot of resources, and makes it a drain for all of us that are involved. And we're all trying to do as best as we can with all the commitments that we have. And Mark, I see Mark Heiss jumped up on my screen. I don't know, Kevin, if we're allowing citizen input on this after council.
As one of the project initiators, I think any comments that Mark has at this point would be appropriate. Here we go.
I'm just very, I'm happy that this group is getting a kickstart, is getting restarted. I think that there's some real value to this, and I see some really real value to this, not only to the village and just generally the local residents in an active transportation committee, but as you know, I've been a real advocate of parking issues, and bike parking issues is one of those issues that we have as well today, and it's a concern of the chamber and the shop owners, because we have folks that are constantly taking their bikes and leaning them up against our windows, occasionally breaking them. And so it's important for the community, both for our residents and for our visitors. And I'm really excited because it also helps celebrate the rich trail culture that we have here in town. So I appreciate the efforts that Marianne is taking to reboot this, and I'm happy to be a part of it.
Well, I'd like to suggest that I call the people that have been involved in this, that we know might want to be involved, and have an organizing meeting. Josue, you should be part of that. Maybe Johnny, I don't know about Denise, but just get people together for one time to talk about what people who are interested want to do, and sort of develop it, rather than spend a lot of time deciding, what it should be under. Start bringing people together and let it evolve. Is that?
I agree. And I think that part of that meeting, we could also outline what will be the scope of the group, so that it will help inform where in the organization it would fit. For example, we have an active transportation plan now, and there's some things that could be updated. We had that one-way travel on South Walnut. That's where my honeymoon ended as the manager. But we could, we probably need to decide, is that an initiative that we're just gonna forgo or take another shot at it? That's something tangible, right? We have a plan already. We should look at what areas we need to build on, and what areas do we need to pursue, because our current funding of 1.8 million doesn't cover everything in the active transportation plan.
And you definitely want to make sure you've got one planning commission representative there, and it would be great for folks to know what the size of the committee is going to be generally. Just you sort of go out and form a thing, but if we know, yes, we're definitely going to have a planning commission member on that committee, and it's going to be 5 to 7 or 7 to 9 or just a range, then I think folks have a general sense of what it is you're putting together, which I think
suggested 5 to 9 people.
Yeah, and then Gary Zaremski, if I heard right, he's been involved with some of the initial planning, and of course, if you say bike racks, Gary's in it, and he's a member of Planning Commission, so I think that sort of is an extra added bonus there.
Yeah, and I have talked to Gary about being involved, so
it really
Excellent.
does.
commission meeting coming up, so I would take that past them to assign their, kind of select their person.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
and it really does fall under one of Planning Commission's statutory powers when it comes to, you look at the revised code under 71302 when you're talking about transportation planning. Not just active transportation, but all transportation planning is within the ambit of Planning Commission.
Yeah, and just to remind everyone, and Marianne, correct me if I'm wrong, that this committee is a subset or subcommittee of planning, or no?
It wouldn't need to be. It
Okay.
can basically liaison with the Planning Commission and do some of the research and recommendations. But it doesn't necessarily need to be part of the Planning Commission. It can be whatever council wants. But as Marianne said, depending on the makeup, it can evolve.
Okay.
But if it's actually treated as a subcommittee of Planning Commission, then it would be subject to the same requirements as Planning Commission.
Likewise, if it's a committee under council or another commission.
Versus a working group with staff.
Right, so it could be a work group or an advisory group established by the village manager.
Right, and that gives you more freedom. And just to echo a comment that Josue that you shared, I mean, 1.8 million sounds like a lot to me. It is a lot to me. But for some of the things that we have to do and some of the things that are in the active transportation plan, I think a big piece of the work, Marianne, to your point, is advising from perhaps a priority perspective, out of all the things that could be done. I mean, 1.8 is only going to get a few or certain things So I think, I mean, I see prioritization of the various projects on a wish list. If you make everything in the active transportation plan a wish list, we definitely need to plan and prioritize and get the most bang for the buck. Because again, to your point, Josue, 1.8 million is not going to do it all. We want to get those items done that can get the most benefit to the most people. All right. All right. Anything else on this proposal? And Marianne, do you have what you need from us?
Yes. At this point, we'll come back.
Okay. And we welcome your return, indeed. All right. Well, thank you very much for all the comments on that one. And I see our next item of old business is a formal citizen review board legal review proposal that was meant to be presented by Lisa Krieger. Judy or anyone else have anything on that?
I believe Carmen's handling that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, so just to fill everyone in really, really quickly, what we need is someone to review the proposal as it stands to make sure that it commiserates with Ohio state law, right? That's all we need. We don't need anybody to review the language of the proposal or to change anything in the proposal. We just need someone to review it to ensure that it follows the law of our great state of Ohio. So I reached out to Columbus and Cincinnati and Dayton, and the general consensus is that this is something that their lawyers handle if they feel that they're competent. And of course, they have more attorneys to choose from to kind of deal with these kind of things. We don't have that here in Yellow Springs. So beyond that, I reached out to the National Association for Civilian Oversight of Law Enforcement, which is NACOLE. I was given a contact person, Cameron McIlvaney. I haven't heard anything back from Cameron, but I also was referred to an attorney in Columbus by the name of John Waddy. I just got an email from him today at 2:46. Ms. Brown, thank you for your email. I would be more than happy to be considered by the village as council to review its Citizens Review Board proposal for compliance with the laws of the state of Ohio. Please feel free to contact me. Like I said, I just got this. And I think that, my next steps are going to be, if it's to reach out to him to see if he's, he said that he's willing to take this on to make sure that we're in compliance with the law. So, I guess at next meeting, I would, reach out to him that next meeting, kind of give everyone an update on that. Does anybody else have anything to add?
Sherman, if I'm remembering correctly, did Lisa want you to go ahead and ask council to approve funds in the amount of, so not for a specific individual, but just to set aside funds so that once you folks have your person, you don't need to wait for another council meeting?
Right. We discussed that briefly, but it wasn't, it wasn't clear to me that she was interested in asking for a specific amount. And I can go back and look, but I don't.
I mean, one, caveat is if you ask for $1 million, you certainly wouldn't have to spend it all. But I know that it can hold you up if you don't have that approval once you've found your person. I see Josue can weigh in on that, but I didn't want it to get further held up.
Gotcha. Josue, would you like to weigh in on that?
Oh, yes, I was just gonna, before I raised my hand before Judy finished that point, that that a specific amount would be helpful. and where it would come from. I know that Lisa and I have gone back and forth about how much money could be needed and where it would come from. I'll remind council that council as a body approved a few $1,000s there. I remember for 12 or 15, specifically for the Citizen Review Board. She wanted it to come out of some other funding sources to preserve that funding for the CRB for other purposes. Ultimately, this is a council decision. While we didn't put it in the budget, if council wants to make that expenditure, very recently I was accused of being an obstacle in getting this done, and certainly I'm not getting in the way of this. So, and I need to do my job to ensure that we are certifying the funds and that funds are being properly appropriated and expensed. So if I ask those questions, not that we're being in any way obstructive in this process, we just need to have that clear directive of how much and where it's coming from. And so we need those approvals from council.
So in terms of how much, just as a proposal, we did previously approve, for, as a matter of fact, this exact same request for legal review. And we set aside, I believe it was $5,000, but the expenses were maybe a little bit over that. So just for discussion, I think that amount of money is something to consider, but I think we need to have the source identified before formalizing the request for that amount. What,
Right.
And I know, go ahead. Go ahead,
No,
Karen.
I would also like to be clear on that because I know that there are, I think it was $15,000 set aside for the CRB to kind of get it started. And then there was some discussion about maybe getting funds from the police department budget. So what I would like to do is take a little bit of time to think about where the funding might come from before we move forward with this. And yes, we had a 4-week window to get the proposal reviewed. But I feel like we've come farther, in the last couple of weeks than we have in the last couple of years. So I'd like to hold off on, our voting for any amount of money to get the legal review done until we figure out where it's going to come from. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Josue, you have a comment?
I would advise with that on where the money comes from. Ultimately, the money needs to come from the general fund. So there doesn't need to be a decision of where exactly it's coming from, other than it's coming from the general fund. And where in the general fund, we're talking about police department budget or the general administrative budget, or we add it to the budget as a supplemental and we pull money from the reserves and add it to our budget. I'm trying to clear the way as much as possible on our end so that we are not being accused of obstructionist. And it's, we've expressed our support and our interest in seeing this move forward. And so that's what I would say about the budget, the budget, where it'll come from. It'll need to come from the general fund. Council just needs to make the decision of how much and to who to pay for that.
What I want to restate is that I think that, in lieu of anyone accusing council of not helping this move forward, well, it's moving forward, and it's moving forward at a faster rate than it has in a couple years. So now that that's established, I mean, people accusing somebody of not doing something really kind of is of no consequence. I just want to make sure that I confer with the other people that are on the CRB. I would like to talk to 365. I would like to talk to other entities that have been involved with this from the beginning before committing any money to it. If that makes sense to everybody, and if everybody can agree on that, I would like to hold off until next meeting.
Well, I was going to propose that we approve $5,000 for this expense to be taken from the commission fund. I think we had 20,000 and we have 12,500 set aside between Arts Commission and EC, which would leave 7,500. So
I'm okay with that. I will admit, I think when I saw the other proposals for boards and commissions and how quickly it got up, to more than half of it being gone already. But yeah, I could support that coming out of boards and commissions, and I will reiterate for the record that as a council person, I do not see village staff, Josue, or anyone else as being an impediment to the process here. I sense there's a will to move forward and no one's standing in the way. I think certainly going into council boards and commissions funds is more viable than a supplemental. I don't think this, regardless of how anybody feels, I don't think it rises to the level of needing a supplemental given the previous scrutiny that's been put towards the current budget. So I do think, to Josue's point, it needs to come out of existing budgeted funds. And I'd be comfortable with that, but just do know that little pot of money is evaporating quickly. So we're down to about 7,000 left for any other boards and commission activities. So Judy, should we formalize anything? Do we need to? Judy, Marion didn't make a. Marion, was that a motion?
well, I thought that might be a way to move forward if we agree, if council agreed to allow up to $5,000 so that Carmen can go and get this done.
Well, I hear Carmen saying pretty strongly that she wants to wait. So, I don't know how you want to do that, but I don't know if that's because she's got some thoughts about how much might be spent, where specifically she's wanting that to come from, but that was what I heard from her. So I don't know if you guys want to decide if you're putting it off to the next meeting for a formal proposal, or this is the proposal for the expenditure.
I'm in agreement with putting it off. I think the discussion that we're having is considering the possibilities. And I think that's what we've done. We've considered some possibilities. There is, I think, the will to move forward, and there is certainly the possibility with respect to the funding source. I think we yield to my colleague who's taking the lead on the issue, and we do table it for now. Carmen can get the input from the various constituents that she's mentioned earlier. And remind me, with the previous review that we did we get sort of like a bio or something on that attorney before we committed? And so that being the case, Carmen, if whenever you feel it's appropriate, I think council would like to see the CV or bona fides or anything about this particular attorney, just so we can know who we might be potentially dealing with.
Sure. I mean, I was pretty clear with the emails that I sent to Nicole and the State Attorney General's office and everyone that I communicated with, that we are just looking to make sure that the proposal as it is now, the bones of it commiserate with the law of the state of Ohio. Mm-hmm. I'm sure that I won't have any problem getting, a CV from Attorney Waddy. So my wanting to wait is for the reason that I stated. This is not just a council thing. There are other groups that have been involved with this for the last couple of years, and I want to communicate with them before I move forward, before we move forward with this. And I think that giving them the opportunity to participate in the discussion about this attorney is, or funds put aside is important. And I know that people are, kind of chomping at the bit for this thing, but it's important that we get it right. So we're not back here in 3 months or 6 months or, even 4 years at this point. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Well, I'm satisfied with moving forward. What we've established is some potential funding sources. I think a dollar figure. I don't see any reason for doing anything differently than what we did before, which is approximately $5,000. So duly noted. All right. So we'll close that discussion and move on to the next agenda item. We're moving to new business now, if memory serves. And the next item on the new business is a discussion on masking and the meeting requirements, and a discussion of masking and our requirements for meeting. So I don't know whether Josue or Greene wants to start this one.
Sure. Well, I think we should start with the legal framework, because we're in a particular position that we have local ordinances that that are outlining or framing the masking at the local level. And our local ordinance is pegged to the transmission rate, and being with higher moderate. And technically, when we are out of that higher moderate community transmission rate, our ordinance is no longer in effect, our masking ordinance and the central business district. So we find ourselves in that time, which I think is long overdue. We're 3 years into this pandemic, and we're now reaching those low community transmission rates. So the what we need to discuss, and I don't know how much discussion and how much leeway we have here, is that the reality is our community has a low transmission rates, which no longer requires the mask ordinance being in place, and the mask ordinance is no longer in place because of how our resolution and ordinances were structured to be pegged to the transmission rate. So from a legal perspective, we would not have basis to continue the masking requirements in the downtown area because of where we are in transmission rates. The challenge that we're seeing is that there are members in our community that still would like those protective measures in place. So what are we going to do with regards to the central district around mask requirements? I think this also, the science is clear that, with the vaccine rates, the immunization rates, the physical distancing, the masks are not required with such low transmission rate. This is what the CDC guidelines have been. So we've got science to support removal of the mask mandate, and we have our legal framework that have essentially sunset our ordinance. Brianne, did I miss anything there? I don't want to speak incorrectly on
No, you've covered the masking. As far as the remote meetings go, the legislature has said all public bodies can continue to meet remotely through June 30th. Our local ordinance says we can do it during any period of declared emergency. So it's really up to council. If we do go back to in-person, of course, we would try to take every precaution that we could in terms of, as Josue said, masks, physical distancing, offering plenty of sanitizer. But of course, there are challenges with our facility, and the fact that we've had broader participation in some contexts by meeting remotely because we're able to offer unlimited attendance versus, even if we didn't have the pandemic, we'd still have to comply with fire codes for our regular meeting room.
Yeah, my thoughts on both things. It weighs more, both masking and meeting in person. I think changing our behavior the very moment that we cross over, from one level of transmission down to the next, which is not permanent necessarily. I mean, I've seen us, sort of dip in the low and then go back up a little bit and then back down. So if you follow it like on a daily basis, which, you typically go with a seven day average, I think we should give ourselves a little bit more time with regard to public meeting. To Brianne's point, we do get a great deal of participation in this space while we're meeting virtually. And if we are at low and stay low for a period of time, I think my mind would change. But right now, we just got to low. And I think our history as a country and as a world is that the first chance we get to change our rules, we change our rules. And in hindsight, it was too soon. Again, this is opinion based on some factual evidence. And I'll speak, Lisa Krieger was not able to be here, but her thought was that she wanted us to share was that perhaps we make the wearing of masks, suggested but optional. So I don't know, what most folks feel about that. But there's one thing I think we should, maybe not move too quickly, because again, our history has shown that when we give up the ghost too soon, we've tended to regret it. And I think that's most appropriate with regard to meeting in person. I have nothing against meeting in person. I just don't want to start it the first chance we get. I'd like to give us
a statistical chart that backs that up if you want me to share my screen.
Oh, absolutely. We're having the discussion. Absolutely. Josue, is she able?
Okay, from the New York Times compilation, if you look at when the pandemic emergency ended in Ohio because the cases were going down, then everything started to open back up. And there was a huge bump in August through September. But you also go correlations around holidays. If you're looking at this time period last year, March 6th, and then we had a little bit of a bump right here around Easter time. So in terms of acting immediately just based on week-to-week transmission rates, as Josue said, our ordinance is tied to that, but will it be prolonged? We don't know yet.
Thank you, Brian. That was quite appropriate, and that certainly speaks to the point. I just think, everybody wants to get there eventually. Everybody wants to get to where we're no longer masking and no longer meeting remotely. Perhaps, maybe somebody prefer meeting remotely, but at least on the meeting, I'd say give it a little more time. Masking, is there such a thing as optional but not required?
I think there is such a thing as optional, not required. I think that there's members of our community that are looking to more direct instruction.
Well, it seems to me we're looking at least two things. We're looking at downtown and downtown businesses. And if I understand correctly, Josue, I think what you're saying is, given that our ordinance follows the infection rate, at this point, we could say that you don't have to wear a mask unless you want to downtown. And this is a question, if a business wants people to wear masks, whether or not the CDC or anyone says you need to, can a business still require that?
We couldn't enforce the mask. We could not, given where our ordinances are, we could not legally enforce our mask requirements. We couldn't go to the businesses and tell them to enforce their mask. But what we can do any business that wants to continue to require masks in their businesses, we can provide them support. This is, the businesses do have discretion into what they, or the individuals they serve and the conditions in which they serve their customer base. Brianne, I don't know if you want to get into any legalese about a business's right to deny service, and this could be a basis for denying services if they're not wearing a mask.
Absolutely. And it's up to the individual business owner. And if they call YSPD and say, look, I've got signage everywhere that says you still got to wear a mask, and I've got a person here who is giving me grief about it and they won't leave, it would be perfectly appropriate for YSPD to say, look, leave or you're going to have a criminal trespassing issue. Because the business establishment, it's open to the public, and they can give the conditions under which they do business. Just like liquor license establishments are not supposed to serve anyone who's already intoxicated or impaired. If they refuse service on that basis, they're perfectly within their rights to.
So to me, it seems like we should just let the community know that it's okay. You don't have to wear a mask downtown, but if a business wants people to wear masks, that to get in that business, you need to do that, and it's up to you whether or not you wear a mask.
Mm-hmm.
In regard to council meetings, I would like to get back as soon as possible. I think we lose something. I think that part of the polarization that we're experiencing is because we're not meeting in person. And so as soon as we can agree to meet in person, I would like to do that.
Duly noted. So Marianne, with regard to us meeting in person, are you prepared to make a formal commitment to do so at this point, or give it just a little bit of time?
Well, I just said I'm ready to do it, but you said you're not, and Carmen
Right.
hasn't spoken. So I think we need to all agree that we're going to do it, and we're not agreeing at this point.
Mm-hmm. Carmen, you want to share your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, whenever. I'm open to it whenever. I don't have any huge concerns with meeting, with resuming meeting in person.
Well, I think we need to have consensus on this.
And we can't, right?
Not today.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So, I mean, we need to, I think our colleagues that are out, and Lisa did share some of her thoughts. So, so I would submit that we not change our meeting status, which is do nothing, actually. We don't have to do anything to stay in the profile that we're in.
Right.
And I would just say it gives us a little bit more time. Lisa, who's a medical professional, her opinion matters. Once we are a full body, with Brian back in the saddle, if you will, I think we can make a decision, make a better decision at that point. All right, everyone good with that?
That makes sense.
So with regard,
if you don't mind, when it comes back, if people can just sort of start thinking about this issue, I'm really opposed to hybrid meetings. And it is an issue about how we come back and whether we come back fully or it's a hybrid thing or how that goes. And so if people can just sort of, I don't know, talk to folks, gather info, get ready for that one, because I think we are going to have to resolve that issue when we determine the meetings in person issue.
Yeah, and Josue, before I give you the floor, Judy, I guess I will say my position is we're one way or the other, not hybrid. I think the police forum, the police chief forum was an example that, trying to do, sort of the hybrid thing just was not comfortable for a lot of folks. So I would submit whenever that either we're all online like we are right now, or we go to in person and not do council meetings in a hybrid format. Allowing, however, for example, Krieger is out and she's obligated right now, but if she weren't obligated and we were in an in-person meeting, we certainly, I think, would want to allow an absent council person to weigh in if we're allowed to do that. And I know I don't know if that by definition is hybrid and gets a little funky, but I think as a body, I think we need to, again, have consensus. And that caveat about, someone traveling, being able to weigh in in the meeting, I think is, needs to be considered as well. Josue, and then Brianne, I'd like for you to weigh in on the council person remote kind of thing.
My next comment is related to how we're going to, what policy we're going to follow for first responders. While the CDC guidelines are recommending or suggesting no mask at this point, I'm going to have a meeting with our first responders, that's our police officers, and we'll speak with our colleagues at the fire department so that if we can decide on what we're going to do for our first responders. We want to make sure that whatever action we take, it's a unified front, that the firefighters and the police officers are following a policy. And I see Paige just turned on her video feed there, and if Chief Burge wants to weigh in on the matter.
Chief Burge, you can unmute when, well,
no, you said it perfectly this way. Thank you. I'm going to touch base with Colin as well, and we'll make sure we're on the same page.
All right. Thank you. Brianne, I was just wondering if, when we talked about, if we're in person for the most part, but a council member is away, the degree to which they could weigh in and officially participate?
Well, again, we've got the ordinance that we kind of tried to address that, because we're allowed to meet remotely during meetings, but we would kind of take the tack that if for some reason our ordinance is not, if some case law comes down that says a local ordinance is not allowed to be inconsistent with 121-22, and that everybody has to be present in person to vote. What has been the procedure for a lot of communities pre-pandemic was if you had a council member who was on the road but wanted to observe the meeting and participate in discussion, and they have a tablet or something at the meeting room, they can participate that way, but they couldn't vote because they're not present in person. So I think that would be, if our ordinance gets challenged at any point in the future, that would be what we would go back to. But as our ordinance is structured right now, if the chair gives permission, because of being out of town or what have you, and says, well, we're not doing a full remote meeting, but we're going to allow this one person to participate remotely because they've got an extenuating circumstance, then it's kind of up to the chair to monitor and let people know that that's what the procedure is going to be.
Okay. Jessica Thomas.
Hi, Jessica Thomas, Yellow Springs News. So I just wanted to ask a clarifying question about the opposition to hybrid meetings. So I just want to make sure that I'm clear on this. My understanding is that if the decision is made to eliminate the option for a hybrid meeting, citizens would not be able to ask questions virtually. But council members would be allowed to possibly join a meeting and vote virtually. So we're allowing council members to do it, but not citizens.
Brianne, you wanna
If
speak to that?
if it's not a hybrid meeting.
So Jessica, I think what, if I am understanding Brianne, the potential would be that the council person could observe but not vote.
Correct. Because what our code says is, with the exception of emergencies, if all the elected officials have to attend the council meeting remotely, but the meeting place cannot be open for public hybrid access, the meeting has to be canceled. So, yeah, the public has to be able to give input at every meeting. Well, let me walk that back. Under the revised code, the public has the right to observe the proceedings. When we have public hearings, they have the right to give input during those public hearings. But there's no general right for the public to participate during the public meetings. So it depends on what's on the agenda. Say we've got an emergency session, water main breaks at the Bryan Center. Nobody can be at the Bryan Center because it's flooded, hypothetically speaking. Everybody says, okay, well, we didn't have a meeting scheduled, but we've got an emergency repair bill. We have to meet on this one issue. It's an emergency meeting. The public can observe. The public isn't necessarily participating in that, whatever council's approving to address the emergency that's going on at the Bryan Center. Again, this is all hypothetical, but that's part of why the ordinance was written to cover not just the pandemic, but any emergency that might pop up, to where we would have to shift and go, okay, well, we were all planning to meet at the Bryan Center, but now we can't.
Yeah. So I guess my question to clarify is, for example, if this meeting were happening in council chambers, Lisa would be able to attend virtually. And if the chair allows it, she would be able to vote, but a citizen could not attend virtually and ask a question or make a comment.
So just I did not mean to open that can of worms, because that is exactly the kind of stuff that needs to be discussed later. That's why I said, take some time, wrap your head around it. That is the conversation we will need to have, because that is a major conversation. So nobody's decided anything at this point. I just want everyone to think about it, because it's a lengthy discussion that needs, I think, all council members present.
I agree.
Thank you, Jessica, for your questions. And thank you, Judy, for keeping us in line. Once again, appreciate you. All righty. Well, that's, I guess have a question to Mary Ann's point about advising shop owners, Josue, if their position is to require masks in their shops, that they would have the support of village government. How I appreciate that, and I will leave it up to village government to get that message out to folks. I was going to ask how it was going to be done, but I trust that it could be done in an expeditious and equitable manner.
And my first step will be to reach out to the movers and shakers of the business community. We have the president of the Chamber of Commerce joining us tonight as well, so we'll connect with them to spread the word.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much. Thank you to everyone for that discussion. The next item in new business is a nomination for the Public Arts and Culture Commission. Carmen Brown. You're muted, Carmen.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. So the PACC is renominating Cheryl Durgans to the PACC. Cheryl has been with the PACC for a number of years, since before it was called the PACC, including service as the president. She is a long-standing arts activist, including being the project manager for the Philadelphia Mural Project. She helped us make a nation mural project secure funding for the completion of the Virginia Hamilton mural that's on the news building, and also with the Wheeling Gaunt sculpture project. We're happy and honored to have Cheryl continuing to serve.
Is there a second?
I move.
Okay, McQueen,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Stokes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, Josue, there's nothing standing between us and adjournment except the manager's report and future agenda items.
Oh.
You can take as much of that time as you feel comfortable taking.
Well, I will do this. I'll take as much time I think it's necessary to get all the important points across. So I'll start with my manager's report, and then I'll go to the request from Marianne, which is the wastewater testing for COVID. So in the manager's report, I have a couple things that do require some input from you. We are looking at submitting several applications as part of the state capital appropriations budget. So I've included a list of projects that we are pursuing or that we're interested in pursuing. And they total over $3.5 million. We have been talking about it for several months. I had released the guidelines to the council and the public, and I had requested projects. Anything that fall under these guidelines, please send them away. We'll start vetting them, and we'll start putting together the applications. So the deadline is March 18th. So I have 10 days to put my packets together, and the packets or the projects that I have information on there. We've got estimates for the electric improvement for Railroad Street. As you know, that lot's going to become a buildable lot once we reroute that storm system. So we could put a building on that lot, and so we're prepping that land in order for us to be able to add retail and mixed-use space in the downtown corridor.
Josue, I think it'd be a good idea to share your first page of your report while you're talking about the projects.
Sure, I can share it on my screen as well. All right, so this is what I have. So the applications are due on March 18th. So we are interested in pursuing the electric improvements on Railroad Lot. We're gonna frame that project as economic development for the downtown, because it really is. It will enable us to make that lot buildable and attract development on that site. Mm-hmm. The electric meters. We want to expand our meter reading system to an advanced metering system where we can read all or both electric and water meters remotely, and we aspire to a future where our residents have instant access to their electric and water consumption on an app or on a website. In order to get there, we need to build the infrastructure, and with the limited financial resources that we have, we're focused on making the infrastructure investments that keep the system up and running. And so we haven't been able to make such investment on these meters. So we're going to be pursuing funding opportunities for those items. We also are coming up on time where we need to paint the water towers, the interior and the exterior. And painting for those towers, it's an expensive endeavor. It's $250,000 for each tower to do the outside and $250,000 to do the inside. And those are instrumental things that we need to do for maintenance of our water towers. The paint prevents the metal from getting rusted. That's on the outside and on the inside, and it ensures that we have reliable, high quality water delivering to our residents. So those are important there. Sewer relining, we talked about our recent successes about removing over 30% of infiltration and inflow. We want to continue to make improvements in our system. Over these water events we've taken on, I know the last water event last week we took on, or last Monday we had council meeting, we took on 7 million gallons of water. And that's not, folks aren't flushing more toilets, that's all stormwater. That's winter system. So we need to continue that work. The outdoor performance space, we had this project on the list, and this was one of those aspirational wish list items. I had several folks ask, well, how great would it be to have an outdoor performance space? This is at the time when we were having the street fair, the Spring Fest, and all these different concerts right here at the John Bryan Center. So we thought, well, how great would it be an outdoor performance space? So we've got this on the list, along with the Yellow Springs Bike Trail shops. These are kiosk style shops that could create pop-up opportunities for startup and entrepreneurs, and it'll bring more activity to the bike trails. These are ideas. We're probably going to focus on the infrastructure items because that's where we have bandwidth, and I think the state has a lot of interest to helping communities improve infrastructure conditions. So those are those things. Do any of these things give any heartburn to council members, or do you have any particular thoughts, or anything that you think that we're missing that we may have time to vet and be able to put on this project list?
Well, no heartburn for me. I do appreciate, I was going to ask a question about the breakdown of the painting of the water towers. How much was the relative cost in interior versus exterior, but you gave that, and I appreciate that.
Right.
And so that's certainly helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I have, I would want to know a lot more about $500,000 for outdoor performance space before saying right on. Hey, not right now necessarily, but it's the first time I've heard of it.
Mm-hmm. And Marianne, to give you some context, when we submitted our application 2 years ago, whenever our last submission was, this outdoor performance space did not get any consideration by the Rick Perales' team. They just didn't think it met any of the scoring guidelines, so it didn't get outside of that preliminary review. At this stage, we kept it on the list, but I doubt it will make it outside of that preliminary review. So we've just been carrying it on the list. I think that there is a need for outdoor performance space in the village. We have limited spaces. We've used the Mills lawn for activities. The Shakespeare theater's been out there. With the loss of the amphitheater of Antioch and other spaces, the demand for such a space has increased. I was in a meeting with Jane Fernandez, president of Antioch, and she made an announcement that they were working towards rehabilitating and improving the amphitheater to bring that back in service. So that's a good idea, the good thing that's happening in that space. So, but Marianne, we're not pursuing the outdoor performance space at this time. It's on the list.
And I do appreciate, Josue, your assertion that you would prioritize the infrastructure items, the got-to-haves instead of the nice-to-haves.
Right.
All right.
So this item, this is where I need some feedback for council. It's an extensive process. We will work with Brian Lampton's office. That's our representative, and that's who we do the preliminary reviews, and our projects have to be endorsed by them. So we'll probably focus on those 4 infrastructure projects. because those are things that they eventually have to get done.
Is there a targeted amount or a expected award amount or some average award amount that we could anticipate?
It's hard to tell. It's hard to tell. Oftentimes, if they see the project that is worth funding, one of the things they'll do is that if it can't be funded by their funding pool, they'll redirect it to an agency that can fund it. So, for example, our water meters and our water towers, that could be a project that could fall under the Ohio Public Works Commission, and that's where we got our stormwater project funded through. So there'll be things that the committee may redirect it to another state agency for funding and for competing for those funds. I'll go back to where I stated. We'll knock on whatever door that we can. What's the worst they can tell us? Go to this other place. And so and I don't see it as wasted resource. Obviously, I wanna be putting things out there that we have a high rate of probability of securing, but it does help get some backing for these projects.
Okay. Any other highlights?
Those are the main ones. I think I can talk on. I've been talking for about 10 minutes on this, so I'll jump over to the wastewater treatment testing. This is work that I appreciate the request from Dorothee and Judith about this. This is something that we started to do early on in the pandemic, and we did not get any positive tests in our wastewater system. And then the infection rates were so high, we just adopted the philosophy or the approach that it's already here, and we needed to behave in a way that COVID was prevalently present in the village, and we needed to treat every encounter with a potential exposure. And that's how we kept a lot of our teams healthy, or healthier than other municipalities, because we took the matter serious, and we took preventative measures. So we dropped our testing partly because of that reason, but also because the data on this as an effective tool had mixed reviews. Now, the data on this being an early detection system is better. One of the things that we've seen, or that we're concerned about, is the cost of those tests, and how will we know that we have the right data point to make a decision? And looking at the CDC guidelines on this testing methodology and technology, is that we'll be able to detect a presence of COVID, and if it's increasing and decreasing, if we have good baseline for the data as we're doing routine testing. And the root testing, what is the right indicator? Well, this works if you have frequent testing to be able to properly monitor whether COVID is increasing or decreasing over time. So it does put some pressure on us, or there's some concerns on our end that one, the level of testing that we need to do over an extended period of time, the cost, and what's going to be the action to take from, say, a positive presence on COVID. If we're going to make a decision that, or are we going to put masks back on in place if we detect COVID in our system? So I think it'll be good to know what problem we're trying to fix, and is this the right tool to fix that, as we look to explore that. I'm interested in hearing from council if this is something that you would like us to spend time and resources to put together a program. And I know Dorothea and Judith are online, and I don't know if you want to hear from them, as they're the petitioners for this work.
I appreciate that you mentioned that you did it and it didn't get any kind of results that seemed helpful. And so for that reason, doesn't sound to me like it would be worth doing.
Well, I would certainly follow Marian's lead on that. Jessica?
Yeah, what were the dates that we were doing that testing, like a range of time?
I will check with our wastewater superintendent tomorrow, and I'll get you those dates, Jessica. I don't have those readily available to me.
Dorothee?
Hi, thank you. So in terms of the issue that we're trying to fix here is that right now we're very lucky that our numbers are low and we're really ready to enjoy this. I think I want to be ready for what is the signal that we're going to be switching to another search if one comes up. I'm reading the CDC guidelines and they seem to be very reactive, as in they're reacting to hospitalization raising, and at which point it might be too late to mitigate in our village, in our schools, right? And I also want to take into account that they are still part of a population that cannot get vaccinated, namely the children under 5. And also, we know that we have vulnerable people or vulnerable families with someone that is immunocompromised in the village or any other sorts of limitations. And I think I was reading about the wastewater monitoring, and now it could be effective, and it's been done, and it's being done in Springfield, Xenia, and Dayton. So maybe we can turn to them, see who they're contracting with, what kind of results they're getting, and compare notes with them. Thank you.
Thank you, Dorothee. Josue, your thoughts about at least just getting some baseline regional data by just reaching out to those other communities?
Yes, certainly we could do that, and we have a regular conversation with our colleagues in Xenia and Springfield. So we can reach out to get their feedback and learn from their successes and failures on this.
Yep. And then that information can inform any additional steps. Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. And Josue, are you satisfied with the time that's been allotted for manager's report?
I do have a couple things related to my manager's report that I'm ready to bring back to council. We had our body-worn camera work group meeting today, and we did the final review with legal counsel or village solicitor on in the meeting, and so we're ready to bring back that use policy and a standard operating procedure for consideration by council. Now, on that grant opportunity, we wanted to meet the March deadline so that we can get in queue in preparation for body-worn grant funding opportunities. But the funding from the Justice System Office in the state has not released a funding opportunity. So I was expecting to see that in February for March due date, but that is not available. So we were rushing to get this done in March in anticipation for that, but no funding opportunity available, but council can get a head start and consider that use policy and standard operating procedure. So that is one thing completed.
Let's wait. So when was it when we had another funding opportunity, but then we realized we were missing the policy?
October.
It was October.
Okay, I just didn't think it would have been very long.
Yeah, in October we had an idea that, or from what we were hearing from the governor's office, is that the governor had made very significant commitments to make investments in law enforcement units across the state in providing the funding necessary. We heard about maybe 2 months ago of the funding announcements as a result of the October grant competition, and our peers at Xenia and other local municipalities got funded, and so we're just waiting for the next round. I don't know, Brianne, if you heard anything.
I've not.
The OCJS.
All right. Well, it's I think we're doing the right thing by working on the legislation and the policy. So just hopefully, we are ready with that when the next opportunity does present itself.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And there was a second thing I think you said this way.
Those are my updates. I'm open to questions if you all have any questions on my manager's report.
All right. Not seeing any activity.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Josue. Judy, future items. Please remind me what we might have added today.
You've got amending council rules and procedures, and I might precede the ordinance with a discussion. So we can talk about that in agenda planning as to whether it's a new business before it comes to legislation or not. You've got Curliss's request to rescind 2021-49. Do you want that just to come back on petitions and communications or new business? Again, we can decide in agenda planning how you want to go with that. The CRB expenditure proposal may come for legal review. And the body worn camera use policy. And then the other things you've got already on your agenda.
Okay, that sounds good, and thank you for suggesting that we will have an opportunity during agenda planning to address a couple of those outstanding issues. Mm-hmm. All right. Any other input on agenda items, future agenda items from the rest of council or staff?
We received the order from OCRC today.
Yeah, I've got it on for next meeting.
Okay. All right. Anything else for the good of the order? All right. Being nothing that I can see, I will accept a motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
Second.
Judy?
Oh, gosh, all those in favor. Your little voices. Such a little group.
Yeah.
We still got to 9 p.m. We still made it to 9 p.m.
Yeah, well, I stopped looking at the clock. So, all right, everyone. So consider yourselves adjourned. Thank you very much for your time and patience. Enjoy your evening.
Thank you. And Kevin, I will text you tomorrow.